Hi, this is Ross Bate
from Role Playing Public Radio. Oh, I'm sorry. Are there a group thing here?
Okay, we're starting over.
Oh, come on! I was saying what you were saying.
God damn it, Tom. Hi, this is Ross Bate with Role Playing Public Radio. This is RPPR episode 70. There are monsters in the school, Tom.
What? Okay.
This episode, we're going to be talking about monsters and other childish things. The one roll engine game that you might know you might know because it's for the great campaign Road Trip.
Buy his book.
Yeah,
Ross wants you to do this.
So we're going to be talking about this. We're also going to have this is going to be a special episode because Tom and I will talk about the game, but then I will have some of the people from the Drunk and the Ugly podcast come over because they're running a campaign of Road Trip over Skype.
Fantastic.
And we're going to be talking about running the game and their experiences with that. So that's going to be a Skype roundtable with them. In the next episode, we're going to do Wild Talents, just going on the one roll engine, train.
Ooh, yeah.
And I'll actually have Greg Stolze, the author of Wild Talents, show up and
your mind will be blown.
Yeah, we'll talk to him and give him shit about, oh my God, how could you design the system? I can't believe we managed to run this long. Yeah, no, it won't be like that.
No, Ross.
He is a vastly
Ross doesn't like to complain about things.
No, Greg Stolze is a vastly better game designer than I will ever be. So, oh yeah, that reminds me actually about speaking about game design, the Killsplosion beta alpha test actually is well underway. We've already gotten some limited playtest reports. Remember, if you are a contributor, February 10th, you should be sending in your playtest reports in. Please get them in. We're going to be doing an RPPR game of Killsplosion, of course, and then once I, test it out and once I get all the feedback in, I'll revise the system accordingly and get the final
PDF. Get my
PDF
stuff over to you.
Yeah, get Tom's fiction is going to be in the system or in the game, to bookend each chapter, and yeah, so keep that in mind. We've been hearing great reports on the RPPR Facebook group, which actually has a lot of discussion. Not the RPPR fan page, but the Facebook group. And yeah, it's pretty fun.
Awesome.
So anyways, also, speaking of buying my book, I have a new ebook for sale. It's called Zombies in Afghanistan. It's a follow-up story.
I know. Zombies? Ross, really?
I know, right? It's a follow-up story to Zombies of the World in the sense that it's set in the same kind of world that Zombies of the World is in.
They're common knowledge.
Right, where they're public and there are different species of zombies. But this shows what happens when the army and the Taliban fight and there are zombies around. And
zombies happen.
Yeah. So it's available for Kindle. It's available also for on Smashwords for any ebook format you want as a 99-cent ebook. And also, I'll let you guys in. There's a coupon in it for Zombies of the World. So if you get that, you get $1 off on Zombies of the World. So you essentially get it for free. And then you get Zombies of the World. So, of course, you have to buy it directly through my website because I can't set up coupons on Amazon.
Ross doesn't have that power yet.
Well, no one does. They don't.
Yeah, Ross can get it.
You don't know how Amazon works, do you?
I know that there's nothing that you can't do, Ross.
Well, thank you for that vote of confidence, Tom. So, if you like zombies, you want a quick read. It's about 9,000 words long. So it's a quick little read. It's worth $1, and you also get posters. We have posters for Zombies of the World free, and use the coupon for that.
Yeah, I don't believe that. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
You bet.
So, and it's also going to the character in it is going to be in the novel I'm still working on called Dead Power, which is zombies and humans working together. If that can, will that work out?
Ryan Ross is actually I'm going to do some zombie stuff for Ross too.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that. So, also in RPPR news, I recently got a new phone. A Droid, and Tom laughs because my last phone I'd actually had since I think 2007 or 2008. I shit you not. I know I had it at the inauguration. I went to the inauguration back in 2009, January 2009. So I had it a long fucking time because I am lazy and cheap, and I work at home. Because I'm a writer and I don't really...
With only the glow of his laptop to keep him company.
Well, yeah, and I don't really need to have a smartphone, but I gave in to needless luxury and I got myself a Droid. And I found out there are all these podcasting apps. I found out one called Stitcher. I applied RPPR for Stitcher, and it's been accepted. So if you have the Stitcher app, which is available for iOS, i.e., iPads, iPhones, iPod Touches, and also... Droids, and I think Palm OS, if you have a Palm device, you can now get RPPR for free through Stitcher. So, hooray for that.
Yeah, droids. These are not... No.
Yeah.
Sorry. No.
Well, and iPhones, it's just mobile, so you can get RPPR on the go. You don't need iTunes.
But I couldn't make that joke, man. I'm sorry.
Okay, I know. You are a good man for doing that.
I'm trying.
So that's a good thing. And if you have any other, if you'd like RPPR on some mobile platform or some other podcasting program or service or whatever that it's not, let me know and I'll try and help out, because I hadn't even heard about Stitcher before. I got a Droid myself, so I'm open to putting RPPR on as many platforms as possible. I just,
didn't know it.
Yeah, didn't know. So
also, you'll soon get to see our faces in some stuff.
Oh yeah. Speaking of RPPR branching out,
we're going to a visual medium, if you will.
Yeah, we are. Like I said, I got the video camera for the RPPR Kickstarter, and we've already started shooting some video for it. And actually, Tobin Manthorpe from Cedar Hills Game, who does mobile games, little RPGs, is doing looks like, I mean, he's shown me some images of the 3D models. He's doing a 3D model of the RPPR dragon and some fighting zombies. And so there's gonna be a cool little intro for it. But we're doing videos of live action stuff to sort of we'll go into reviews and stuff like that. We're also doing comedy and sort of informative stuff, edutainment, like the Rift script reading.
Oh man.
Because there is a Rift screenplay that has been published by Palladium Games, and I had some people come in and do, including Tom and Thad, do a script reading of select scenes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just wow.
Yeah.
I read this, and you know what? I feel hope. I felt hope that I could write something that would get paid money for in a movie.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, well, the thing is, they got option, but
that's what I mean. But money was exchanged.
There was exchange.
So it makes me hopeful that something I write, could have the same thing.
This is true.
I'm not saying it's bad.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying it's not brilliant.
Okay, Tom.
It's not exactly. You're not going to see a script like this, in some movie in the Cannes Film Festival or something.
Right. So, and we have other things. We're actually taking some ideas of something like the best bits from our actual plays and converting them into improv skits that we can shoot live action. So we've done the Ot Yug for sale, which was also a bit of work. So
yeah.
I don't want to spoil anything about it. It's
well, we had some great help, some great ideas.
Nathan, who is also in Water Home from Hell and also in D&D The Best Game Ever, came and helped out, and we'll let you find out.
It'll be an experience.
Also, just a reminder, we have a Minecraft server up with all kinds of crazy shit being built. I am looking into mods for the server, so if you can find any really good server-side mods, let me know. I'll try to implement them. It's a little complicated, and I'm not very good at the Minecraft modding programming stuff, but whatever. It's really cool, and there's a really cool community of people building shit on the Minecraft server. So
some of it is nuts.
Yeah. And finally, Unspeakable. I'm still working on that with Shane Ivey. We just recorded an episode, with Scott Glancy, Shane Ivey, and Greg Stolze, speaking of him, talking about historical accuracy in games, or like how to run games in various eras, like how much research is enough, how much is too much, how much is not enough, what builds immersion. I know I'm frequently criticized for breaking immersion.
Well, I remember the Dig to Victory.
Yeah.
That's
actually brought up in the episode. So, and as part of that, Tom is actually going to be running some Call of Cthulhu, historical Call of Cthulhu, and that we're going to put on the Unspeakable because we have such a huge backlog on RPPR. We're going to open it up, let the Unspeakable have some of this stuff. So, Tom, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's essentially going to be set in 1940 America, with players will be German saboteurs coming over here by U-boat to carry out missions in secret, since in 1940 America's not technically at war with Germany. So it's going to be some espionage, covert ops stuff in 1940s America.
Yep.
And then Supernatural happens.
Well, of course, it's Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah.
So look forward to that, and that's kind of it for the news. And we've been talking that for a little bit longer.
Well, we got lots of news.
We do, I know, because we're sort of, in case you haven't realized, we're at a monthly schedule for the main podcast now, and we're weekly for the actual play, and I think that's a lot of content. You know, I know some podcasts do a lot more in terms of their regular release cycle, but we're doing 2 podcasts here, and we're doing videos, and we're doing
and it's a lot of work to do
and Zombies of the World.
It's a lot of work to do the actual play podcast because we actually have to do games.
Yeah, exactly.
We have to do fun activities.
Yes,
for
we do
3 hours at a time
or more.
Yeah. God.
And then I have to do
just to feed your insatiable appetite for it, which we are willing to do.
Yes, because you are the best fans.
You are the best fans.
You guys are awesome and stuff. So
if anyone says that you are not the best fans, they're calling me a liar.
Yeah,
you are the best.
Exactly. So monsters,
kissing ass, yes.
and other childish things.
Yes, indeed.
Let's talk about that,
shall we?
It is a great game.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think right off the bat we should just get yes. It is a great game.
It basically, just so you know, the reason why I wrote for Monsters and Other Childish Things is the first edition of it came out was this thin little paperback that was on a print-on-demand service. I think it was like Lulu. The art dream just uploaded a PDF. You could buy this little 30-page game. It sounded really cool, so I bought it in like 2007 or 8, and I loved it so much. I sought out Shane Ivey at the Gen Con, and also Scott Glancy.
Yeah.
And I just told Shane, first, that was the first year we did Gen Con at all, and that's where I did Dig to Victory, and that was great.
Yeah.
But that was also, I told Shane, I love this game. Please let me write for it. I want to write for it. I could write a campaign. And he's like, all right, send me an idea. And so I sent him an idea that was curriculum conspiracy, basically. And it went on from there. And that's like very few games. Like the game I'm doing that for right now is Eclipse Phase. Hi, Eclipse Phase guys, please let me write for you. Okay, thanks, bye. Because I'm still writing.
Write that book.
Yeah, write that book. I'm still pitching things for Arc Dream, obviously, but it's very few games really get that reaction. Like I must write it. Like that's the single best thing I can think of a game. I must write for it. So that's how it started, and we started playing it with obviously me playtesting the stuff for Curriculum Conspiracy, and I think, and then Road Trip, and then we haven't done a campaign of it, which is kind of odd considering I've written one. But I playtested each segment with the RPPR group, and then
I think I played in every segment of Road Trip except Area 51.
Right, yeah, which I've done at conventions, but that one's kind of. It's based on all the other chapters being put together,
right? So it's the one that I'd have to do a campaign.
Yeah, it's kind of you can't really play test the finale.
Yeah, and I'll be honest. I remember when you first pitched it to us to play it, I wasn't that enthused.
Oh,
because
really?
It's really we get to play kids in a game. That's wonderful. Which I've never really liked to do. And this is dating back actually to a game called Cybergen. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
Yeah, I've heard of it, but why don't you tell me?
It's well, it's what soured me. This was like high school still, and I played Cyberpunk, obviously, which everyone knows about that, which I loved. And then one of our friends said, "Hey, there's a game after that called Cybergen." And like, oh, okay. So we played it, and then we're like, well, you're kids, and we start playing. And I realized, and he says, well, this is really great because it gets rid of all the guns and the armor and all that shit. Like, and that's when I realized I really like the guns and the armor. In fact, that's what I like. And it's ever since that I've never really liked playing games for your kids because it kind of sours me on. I don't like to get to do the stuff I do. This was actually the first game I ever played, Monsters and Other Childish Things, where it was fun to play a kid.
Okay. And why is that? I mean, like
because it's the premise. And I am a monster whore. I love them.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're a kid with one, and it's a kid with a pet monster that isn't Pokemon, which was wonderful to me. And the fact that, these things really do eat people. Oh, that's cool. But he really digs you. Yeah. And I guess, and also it was really fun for me to actually get to role play both of them. Mm-hmm. But that was the game that actually meant, okay, playing kids can be fun. You just have to have the right setting for it, right game.
Yeah, and that's sort of like one of its greatest strengths and weaknesses at the same time is that Monsters is a toolkit of a game, which I know I've said it before. By that I mean there's really no preconceived setting for it at all. I mean you're a kid with a monster for a friend, but what are you like?
So go.
Yeah. So go. So it doesn't define what that monster is really. Is it like something, or how that monster will change if you become an adult, who your adversaries are, what you're going to do, are they public, are they secret? That's all up to you.
Which I like that.
Right. And most of the time you don't need that for individual scenarios. Most players can sort of put that at the back of their head. But if you're doing a campaign, obviously that changes. But so you could do a Pokemon thing, a Poke Thulu, or, like hardcore, like kids are the only ones able to tame these giant monsters that fight to the death. Or you could do something that's more like Scooby-Doo, where it's like solving mysteries.
Only it's the dog really talks, and the dog is just what everyone else sees.
Right, and exactly. So there's a great latitude in that.
And I could see playing this in any setting, really.
Yeah.
I mean, or like any historical period, any setting.
Yeah. I've actually, one of the things I proposed to on RPG.net, and I haven't pitched it to Shane yet, and just a monster, is actually doing a version of Dungeons and Dragons, or parody of Dungeons and Dragons for Monster and Other Childish Things, where the idea is everyone is a kid in a village with a dungeon near it, and everyone's monster is a classic, iconic D&D monster. It could be a dragon, it could be a beholder, it could be a mind flayer, it could be whatever. And the idea is and they have to keep these adults, i.e. the adventurers, from doing stupid things. And they kind of have to like they're either it could be like the dungeon's like a tourist trap, and the kids have to goad their monsters into fighting, and playing dead or whatever, or they actually have to protect the sacred artifact from the adventurers who are just going to use it to blow up the world, or that would be the basic premise, and like I know some people on RPG.net love the idea and want me to do that, or they did, but
I read about another one person said he was going to do a setting of Monsters and Other Childish Things. It's like the adventures of Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn with monsters.
Right, exactly. And that would work great. I mean, there's all kinds of superstitions you can work in, folklore, mythology. It's amazing. That's a really good idea.
Another one I saw was like a game that was being done on a cruise ship out at sea. Mm-hmm. Just all kinds of, basically just all kinds of stuff you could
So
do whatever you want.
That's what attracted me to it, and that's I think where all of you can see that. You get the pocket edition of it, the little paperback, which is like $10-15, and then you got enough to run a game. So you can go hog wild with, and you can expand it.
You get a lot for your money.
You do get a lot, and then with bigger bads, which is another $15 or whatever, you have everything. You can even play just like not even a kid with a monster, but a kid with just superpowers, basically. Like there's of course the main campaign setting of Candlewick Manor, or if he's playing like an Edward Gorey X-Men type character, Addams Family X-Men. You're like the kid with the Innsmouth look, or the kid that can draw the color out of space, or whatever. Something weird like that. We have an actual play of that. If you would,
I remember that. That was the one time I tried to run this, but all kinds of stuff just went wrong.
Yeah, so it's a really fun game, but there's a lot of things that can go wrong with it. I think the first thing that a lot of people would for those of you who've looked at it and kind of like, maybe not. I think one of the first stumbling blocks is not unique to monsters, but just the one roll engine in general is a major stumbling block for a lot of people who might want to play these games, but like. It's different. I mean, and there is a learning curve with the one roll engine.
It took us a while to learn it.
Yeah, and there are a lot of times where we didn't know exactly how to, like, combat's a bitch when you're not really sure about how to do, declare, roll, resolve, until you have that down. And even when you get a lot of players, especially in Wild Talents, but even in
that's
Monsters,
another story.
Yeah, that's another story. That's next episode. We're not gonna deal with that
next time on RPPR.
Yeah, I'm gonna Greg grow like, what the hell did you son of, I'm sorry.
And then he just stares at you and you back down.
Well,
because he has that power.
It's over Skype. He's a nice man. He's perfectly.
Yes, I know. It's just if you start that, he would just not even angrily stare at you, just lock gazes, and you would just. I lose my will.
Russ, you fool. That's what
it's you fool.
So there's that, and there's really you just have to sort of bite down. I don't know an easy way.
It's pretty much just try it. And
I would say start simple with it. Just little skill challenges. Can you make any matches on these dice?
I'd say actually, but definitely do try monsters before you try like Wild Talents.
Well,
I think it's a little. I think monsters is a little easier.
Monsters is definitely easier. It's Wild Talents on training wheels. It's definitely doesn't have nearly the complexity that it does. I mean, Monsters was designed out of Wild Talents. It was designed. Ben Bowe designed it out of Wild Talents as sort of like simplifying it. So
it's a good intro to the one roll engine, I think.
I think Nemesis would be better if it was in print, but it's just a PDF, so it's kind of paying. And Rain, I think, would be better if the setting was not as emphasized as it is. It's got a very exotic fantasy setting. So yeah, I think it really out of maybe Godlike, because Godlike you have superpowers, but no, Godlike is superpowers work really weird in that. So yeah, Monsters really is the simplest one roll engine game.
And I've heard one thing, another thing.
Oh no, Dirty World. Well, even Dirty World is kind of complex because you have that rhetoric. So yeah, that's a good point. Monsters really is easy.
But I'd also say that another thing I've heard people that don't care for it is they don't like having to role play 2 characters.
That is a big thing, because the idea is the basic unit usually is that you have a kid who has a monster friend, and each player gets one. Now there are ways to roll. You could say each player is a kid or a monster, but the rules are set up so that you have like relationships that only the kid has, but can loan to the monsters. And there are certain, like, monsters don't have a perception skill, for example. They might have an ability, but that's specific to the monster. They don't have skills at all. They have their abilities, which are variable. So, like, I know when I've run games, like, make a notice check. Oh, wait, monsters can't make notice checks? Well, just sit on your thumbs,
Or sit in your storage device.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's a good point. Like, so normally you have to have a kid with a monster. And so how do you do that? Like, most players would treat the monster or the kid as equipment, basically, like, or henchmen. Like, do this, lackey.
Yeah, I actually, that's one thing I love doing.
Yeah.
Because I've actually, some of the most fun I have, and I think some of my best role playing in that is when I'm having a conversation with my monster.
Yeah.
And I love to go back and forth like that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do.
Yeah.
But I can see that's one thing I've heard some people say is that it's either they don't want to play 2 characters at once, or I just don't know if I can do it. I'm not that good. I've heard that from some people, but to me, I can't complain about that because it's one of my favorite things.
I think it's obviously a very variable thing. Some people aren't going to really like, and some people are going to really enjoy that. So if you're going to run it, you kind of need to get a sense of your group's biases and maybe kind of come up with some that's a great thing about Monsters, is it's so customizable, so easy to modify that you can easily adapt. So if there's 2 players who are like, like if you have 2 players that are dating each other and they're like very knit, you could have them be a monster and a kid, because they're going to be finishing each other's sentences anyways, so that really works. But if you have one player who's really shy and reclusive, you might have him be both, just so he has enough opportunity to try something at any given time. Or someone like you who just loves role-playing with monsters and loves talking to himself, because you're a GM a lot of the time, so you're used to doing that.
Yeah, actually, I remember I got a lot of laughs when I was playing Mr. Duke and the other kid.
Yeah, because the thing is, you need to think of it as you have now 2 faces to present to the group. You can either be the kid or the monster. So if the kid can't do something, the monster can. So like if you can't think of something witty for your kid to say, then think about the monster. So yeah, you have 2 sets of tools to role play with. So if you think of it that way, I think it really helps. So the other thing is logistical on the GM's part, which is if you have a large group, you really do need to split it up, or you need to think of some things, because if you have like 6 players
and 6 monsters,
6 players is equals 6 kids and 6 monsters, which is redonkulous.
You better have Cthulhu showing up to give them a challenge.
And Dagon and Hydra, because that's another thing. Well, especially I found is combat. You really do need to have about equal combatants on either side. You can't just have one. If you use the bigger bad supplement and have like a monster that's gigantic versus, because they have size rules. You could have a Godzilla-sized monster fight a bunch of smaller monsters and actually have it be somewhat balanced. Then you can do that, but it's tricky. So you have to think about how you're going to it's
tricky, people.
Yeah, it's again kind of like superhero games in that it's really there are no baselines for it. I mean, there are no like, it's not like D&D where you're going to have monster characters of level 5 can only fight CR5 monsters, you know, or something like that. It's kind of, it's really variable. So you have to be very aware of your group's limits and powers. So, of course, the main thing is, and that's based on how they create their characters.
Which, actually, I'm going to say that's another one of my favorite
well, and
things.
that's also a big stumbling block too for a lot of people, because aside from the one roll engine, the monster creation system is really atypical of role playing games. I mean, the for kids, it's very straightforward. You have this many points, you get this many for stats, and this many for attributes, and then you assign relationships, and we'll get to relationships a little bit. But monsters, why don't you talk about that? Like,
well, essentially, the monsters it's basically you have to design it like, basically from scratch.
Yeah.
And essentially you have to come up with, I believe, 10 dice worth of hit locations.
Yeah.
Which can be anything, you know, say like, you know, you can make it where your monster is a giant plant, or, you know, the monster's teddy bear with the vertical mouth.
Yeah.
Yogg so soft.
Yeah.
But you have to basically then assign what each one does, and there's like several different stats for each location, whether it can attack, defend, or do something else.
Yeah.
And there's like, you know, there's like, you know, like I believe like 100 dice worth of stuff you can put
50.
into 50.
Because it's 10 hit locate. Because again, the one roll engine, it's all based on hit locations, and each hit location you have 10 points worth because you're rolling a 10-sided die, and you know, like if you roll a 5, you know, 2 5s, you're hitting a hit location 5, for example, or 10, which is the head. But each point of location has 5 dot points worth of abilities assigned to it, so you have 50 points total, and you can only sign up to 4 to 1 contiguous hit location. So that's the idea. So you have your head, your torso, your legs, and your arms. You know, for a
but of course, in this monsters, it's each hit location could be something just wildly different. And
well, it doesn't even have to be like really tangible. It could be like menacing aura, or you know, dark shadows or something like that. So the idea is you punch him in his dark shadows, you know, which sounds pretty dirty actually.
And the thing is, like, you know, and the book it lists what each of the things you can assign to it does, like gnarly, which is basically extra damage, and you know, stuff like that. But it doesn't really give you a chart of how to build it.
Yeah.
That's all up to you, and for a lot of people, that's kind of a daunting challenge.
Yeah, no. One thing the book does suggest, which I've heard has good success in some groups, is give the players crayons and paper and have them draw their monster. You know, and then once they draw them, then you can assign numbers to each area. You know, this is a big area, so that's 5 through 7 or something like that. And, you know, go from there, and then you can assign points to it. So what can this part of the monster do? You know, so that's something a lot of people do that's good for role playing. So
you know, Ross, I just realized the Otyugh would make a great monster for Monsters and Other Childish Things.
Oh no, like I said, every single monster in Dungeons and Dragons would make a great, you know, monster for.
Yes, I think I remember the first monster I ever designed was a Nazi mind flayer.
Right.
Wow. I was obsessed with shit back then, wasn't I?
You back then?
Don't go there.
Did you not just say we're German saboteurs in 1940?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shut up, Ross. They're not, but you're not mind flayers. You might have an easier time if you were, but you're not.
All right.
Anyways, but
so that's kind of like, especially if you're going to run a game of it, you're going to have players come in. That's something you're really going to need to read up on, generate a few on your own, so you can get a sense of it, because it's not easy. It's definitely the most abstract, hard to get part of the rules. That if you can get through that and the basic one roll engine mechanics, you're in the clear. You're good. You know, everything else is much simpler. Like assigning, you know, creating NPC monsters. There's of course tons in the book, and there's tons
some really
in Road
good
Trip.
ones too.
Yeah, and every book every supplement for it has monsters. There's also in the Bigger Bad supplement threats, which are basically dice pools of threats. And so instead of saying goons and then writing out stats for 5 crappy goons, you write 10D goons. You know, and then again, well, we're not going to explain the rules, so just look it up on there, and you know, you realize it's easy to go through. So.
And yeah, once you get that done, you should be good for a lot of the other one roll engine games.
Yeah, because they're all meant to be the same system. Now, of course, there are quirks that are unique to monsters. Now, aside from the monsters themselves, there are the relationship mechanics, which are sort of the kind of unique feature of it, you know.
Yeah, like these are the things that give your character strength.
Right. Emotional strength. These are their ties to other people and things.
Like friends, family.
Right. It can be
your
objects.
dog.
Yeah, you didn't like... I mean, it's easy for roleplay, like your parents,
your friends.
Yeah. But I know you mentioned you didn't like some of them,
like... Well, there's some things people put dice into, like... Literally, I had one was some relationship dice into his Trapper Keeper.
Yeah.
Which I can see say if you're trying to roll to remember like where you put something, you hit it, but that was a long time ago, and you just kind of look at that, just something that you had at the time.
Yeah.
Which I could see working, but if you're trying to like run down a corridor with a horror from beyond time and space lunging at you through the school corridor, and you want to try to run a little faster.
Right.
I don't see how you could look at your Trapper Keeper and do that.
Right. Well, just so you know, like by these relationship mechanics, you define them, you assign them a point value. You get like 6 points. You distribute among at least 2 relationships, and you
get like bonus dice.
Anytime you invoke them, you say you get a bonus die equal to that.
And if you succeed, nothing happens. But if you fail,
if you succeed, you succeed. Nothing,
but if you fail,
your relationship
is damaged,
and you have to spend time. You have to spend effort to repair it. To fix
Yeah.
it. So, like, you could say, the standard example is one of your parents, your dad taught you how to fight, so you could invoke your dad relationship in order to punch a bully in the nose. But if you fail, then you get mad at your dad, or he gets mad at you because your clothes are all messed up from the fighting, and then you have to make it up to him or something like that. So. You can also loan them to monsters, which they can then use on their abilities. But if they fail, then the same thing happens.
Which it's a great system. I like that. It's just when it makes sense.
Yeah,
but that's really not really. It's not a game system thing. It's more of just a personal.
It's open to abuse from players. In other words,
yeah.
Like my relationships, my trench coat and my katana, and my master, who is in another country, and I never talk to him.
I'm not even sure he exists.
Yeah, exactly. So
I was on a lot.
In order to repair my relationship, I just think. I don't say anything to him. I don't have to do anything.
I was on a lot of pixie sticks at the time.
Yeah, exactly. So it's open to abuse. So keep that in mind.
But yeah, it's a good system when it's not abused. Let me say that. Put it that way.
Yeah. So the idea is when after I wrote curriculum, I came up with Road Trip because again, it's this very diverse kind of system that allows for a lot of different ideas. I know a lot of people have used it for different things. I know Aaron used it for his Nim Secret of Nim game with the Cthulhu Mythos. So that
got intense.
Yeah, that did get intense. So you could see it's a very versatile thing. I mean, there are some things that. It is a lighter game than say Warhammer 40K Death Watch it's not exactly that, but I don't know, what do you think?
No, it is. It's normally I always do it. I don't know about you, but whenever I hear like I'm going to be playing in a game, and whenever I hear what the game is, I automatically go into a mode like, okay, here's what I can expect. Now D&D, obviously I have when I think I'm doing that, okay, there's certain things are going to happen. I will have to worry about some things. I will not have to worry about some things. With this game, it is okay. It's going to be a lighter game. I'm never going to be in danger of actually dying because kids suddenly dying. That's not what this game is about, really. And a lot of kind of PG scary moments, really. You're never gonna have to see a slaughtered person hanging upside down on a cross.
Now, I have been in games where that has happened.
Well, it does, but I don't think about that. So if that actually did happen, I'd be surprised.
Right. Ben ran a game of Candlewick, and he had...
I remember this.
Well...
I wasn't in it, but you told me.
Yeah, because it was at Dragon Con.
But I remember you telling me
he had a character, an NPC girl... have like a bunch of scissors fall on her, and she died from that. So it was like a very Edward Gorey kind of like gruesome death. And so it can be darker, but I especially for Road Trip kind of kept it sort of lighthearted because I didn't. Again, it's easier to skew light, and then the individual GM can make it all grimdark and turn it all Frank Miller as I was on the road for 12 hours and blah blah blah.
Nurse
rain beat down as the demons were chasing me, you know.
And robot Nurse Ratchet would be a lot more sinister.
Yeah, exactly. She'd have swastikas and, you know, tattoos and branding. And yeah, it would get intense really quick. But it's easier to go from light to dark than dark to light. If you start out with Nazi robots, then you can't really dial it back. Like, oh, they're just goofy German robots, you know. Like Yeah, it's
keep it consistent.
Yeah, so if you're going to do that, you kind of need to think of your tone of voice, because there's nothing in the system that says this is the right way. Any way is the right way. It's just try and be consistent.
Yeah, but normally when I think of a lighter game.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of how it's intended. You actually, even Candlewick Manor, which is probably the darkest published material for it, is still, again, kind of the Addams Family kind of level of Edward Gorey kind of quirk, not, you know, even Edgar Allan Poe or, you know,
not The Ring or anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, not exactly that. So,
oh yeah, by the way, someone actually designed the tape from The Ring as a monster.
Oh, I could see that. Yeah. I could definitely see that. That's a great thing about it, is that it can be designed in so many different ways. Like, once you start looking for it, there's so much material out there that is perfect for monsters and other childish things that you can get campaign ideas from anything. There was a music video last year. Skrillex, who is a dubstep DJ, came out with this song, or the music video for it, and I can't remember the name of the song, but because Skrillex, it's all, it doesn't really matter. You don't really think of the song title, like, it's Skrillex. It's kind of all the same. It's this, you know, creepy child, you know, molester type, you know, with a trench coat, following this little girl. She goes into a basement, and then she starts, you know, using telekinesis to throw him into walls, and he's screaming, ah! And then this fucking giant monster appears behind her, and you're like, oh my god, that's a monster's character.
And you know,
they hunt down creepy adults and kill them.
Like, and then afterwards they're gonna look and then giggle.
Yeah, right? Well, and then put another notch on the wall. That's literally how the music video ends. And that's like the perfect kind of thing. And then you know, every kind of video game, you have everything like Psychonauts. Like, Bigger Bats has rules for like playing not just with monsters, but setting up rules to where kids have basically creepy, weird powers, you know? So you could do Psychonauts, the video game. Speaking of which, have you played Psychonauts?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Tim Schafer, from the guy who created it, said, oh, I'd love to do Psychonauts too. We were just not able to do it because we don't have the money. Nobody wants to give us money for it. And then Notch, the guy who created Minecraft, was like, how much money? And this is over Twitter. And they're like now in talks about it, because Notch is, of course, you know, sitting like Scrooge McDuck, you know, over in Europe land, being all rich from Minecraft addicts. And
he's like, bring me the head of a pig.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to fund Psychonauts too, because it amuses me. So that's kind of it. So there might be Psychonauts too. So hooray for that. So tangent over. But there is just a vast body of literature, of entertainment, of stories that could be turned into Monster and Other Childish Things campaigns. So literally anything. It could be as dark as you want or as light as you want. And you don't even have to have it be kids. Like, it could be like talking animals, like Aaron did with The Secret of NIMS. So it's just how you interpret the rules.
And I'd really like to do one where the players just play the monsters and the kids are actually NPCs beyond their control.
Okay, yeah, you could do that. That would be very easy to do. Like,
I was thinking, like, you know, they're your only way out of whatever otherworldly dimension you dwell in.
You just need a couple of rule hacks to give monsters the ability to do basic ability checks, like. I mean, the main thing is perception, because that make a notice check. You know, it's kind of like
that's a very common check
in fucking every game ever, isn't it? I mean, it's like notice hidden things. Like, what is it about that is so universal?
Palladium doesn't have that.
Don't they?
No, they do not.
I thought they had. They finally added in a perception thing in the newest version.
Not that I remember.
Okay. I mean, I know back in the 90s or whatever, but I thought they finally. I don't know. We're thinking too much about Palladium.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah. So you can see there's just anytime you want to do. I mean, it's even lighter than Little Fears, the game we just ran for on the podcast a little while ago, or on the actual play podcast.
Oh, the Polybius.
Yeah, Polybius. So you even thought like Little Fears was darker and, you know, more grim dark.
I did.
Yeah.
Because to me, I got the vibe from that game that there was a chance you could die. It was there.
Yeah.
You know, when the horrible frog thing first showed up, Like, oh my god, he could actually kill one of us with that acid spit. I got that vibe from it.
And you wouldn't necessarily in a monsters game if you were just playing kids with maybe 1 or 2 supernatural abilities.
Right.
Okay. I can never...
let's be honest. When we were kidnapped by Cool Rat,
yeah.
That
was a fate worse than death if you didn't get away. That was, being trapped.
I think I remember the first time I played that, I joined the ninjas and so I have swords, little plastic swords. Like, I try to cut my wrists with it.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, in the Sucrose Park thing, that's a fate worse than death right there. So
it's to exist only to be entertained.
I actually, someone sent me the conversion notes. One of the RPPR fans sent me conversion notes of the Sucrose Park NPCs into Little Fears.
Really?
So yeah, which I thought was great. Like, all right, cool.
Yeah. By the way, radical.
Yeah, radical. Yeah. I don't know what it is. That Sucrose Park does seem to be the most popular out of all the road trip. We'll talk, of course. Yeah. When I do the Skype road call, we'll talk about that with the Drunk and the Ugly guys. So
fantastic.
That will be awesome. Jawsome, really. So.
Oh wow, really?
I know. What?
I'm the one that actually owns that VHS, Ross.
It's on YouTube, Tom. It belongs to the internet. It belongs to the world.
If it's on the internet, it belongs to the world.
It does. So deal with it.
It's dealt with.
Okay, great. So when we come back, we'll have a letter from Tom. We'll have shout out.
This is still episode 70. There are monsters in the school, Tom, and we're still talking about monsters and other childish things. And but this time we're going to be talking with Matt and Nathan from the Drunk and the Ugly podcast. So why don't you guys introduce yourselves, Matt?
Hi, I am Matt Campen. I am the administrator of the Drunk and the Ugly. I also edit most of the show, and I've run probably about 40 games on there, interchangeably of Road Trip, Mrs. Frida's, and other games. Like I say, other childish things. Damn it!
It is a kind of a mouthful to say. It is a little
Moact.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
exactly. I just call it monsters for short now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I use. I do as well. So, and Nathan?
I'm Nathan Knapp. I host the Drunk and the Ugly, and I am almost a published author.
Almost a published author. Your sorted dystopia game on Kickstarter, I presume, is what you're referring to. Yes, we're going to be I'll be doing an actual play with these guys over Skype at some point. That'll be on the Drunk and the Ugly. I'm still reading up on it. There is a lot of material. The playtest PDF they sent me is 100 pages, so I'm still looking through it. So Drunk and the Ugly fans, you have that to look forward to. But of course we're on RPPR, so maybe they'll listen to both. I
think actually all of our listeners also listen to RPPR. It works.
Probably. I don't know. Any Drunk and the Ugly listeners, if you don't listen to RPPR, you're not going to comment on this. Damn it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, hopefully you'll mention it on your website.
Yeah,
but, we'll see how this goes. So with Tom, we were talked to him about playing monsters and both in building characters, learning the One Roll Engine system, role-playing 2 characters at once. But this, I want to talk to you guys because one, you approached me and gave me the idea, and I'll totally steal it. So thanks. And then the second is that you both have experience running the game, and running the game. I mean, playing it is a bit of a challenge because of the factors I just mentioned, but running the game is even more of a challenge because of everything from player expectations to the lack of a single cosmology set of rules for the system. And I know one of the first things when we were outlining is you guys said throw away your notes. So what did you mean by that?
I mean, basically when and this is a thing I learned very, very early on in this, that you can't try and write anything remotely linear for a Monster No Childish Things game. Even if you you can look over your players and watch them like hawks, and I did that. That's actually on the community actual play in a couple early sessions, and all it proceeded to do was just make me very angry as everything failed repeatedly. Because even in the most basic sense, monsters is the easiest system to make a character that is unstoppable in. You cannot hope to make something that will defeat your players unless it's going to be frustrating. And I mean, really, why are you trying to make something to defeat your players? And on the other side of that, your players could have your monsters can do anything thanks to the useful quality, and they can do. You may want to, I don't know. Well, don't, like, as I'm saying right now, don't try and limit your players and what they're doing.
Yeah, again, it goes back to the same sort of rule that we go to improv theater. Don't say no, say yes, but.
Yeah.
So that's just a universal rule. But I agree, because in Monsters, again, you don't have that emphasis on plot that you do in, I wouldn't say, normal role playing games, but in Dungeons and Dragons and Call of Cthulhu, there's a dungeon to crawl, there's a mystery to solve, the plot is the central thing. And in Monsters, it's very much focused on the characters and the relationship, who these kids are and how they relate to their monsters, and how that relationship relates to the larger world, and that sort of takes center stage. So defeating the monster isn't as important. Defeating the bad guy or solving the mystery isn't as important as how you got along doing it.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And one of the things is, like, monster challenges are really easy to overcome typically. If somebody else is using a monster, you can bust yours out, no problem. What's really hard for children to do is solve mundane problems. The first scenario I'd actually written for our for the campaign Mrs. Frida's Halfway Home was just like, you guys want to go see an R-rated movie? Your guardian won't let you do that. What are you gonna do? That's surprising, because then the other thing is that there's always this theme of temptation, because you have this M1 Abrams tank with claws that can you have an Apache helicopter that's also a whale.
Yeah, exactly. But how is that going to help you see an R-rated movie? In a mission that requires stealth and subtlety and discretion, these are not exactly virtues. These are not exactly assets.
And there was somebody who when they're due to external supernatural sources, their guardian ended up finding out that they snuck out and came after the kids. And one of them panicked, ran out the fire door, proceeded to summon his giant flaming bird, hop on it, and fly across town back home. Which comes
not quite the most subtle solution.
Yeah.
Of course. So it's kind of, in a sense, that you have this power. I know, was it you, Nathan, I think, that said that Monsters is really a deconstruction of power fantasies?
Oh, it's actually Matt. Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry.
It's fine.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, I mean that's one of the things that's written. It's written in the book. It's not like it's less a matter of like how do you solve this problem, and more like, do you want to solve it this way? I mean, there is a thing. There's a thing in there, like, monsters always have your best intentions in mind. Like Timmy fails a grade. Like, his monster realizes he doesn't like that. Monster decides to solve the problem by going to his teacher's house, dangling him over a balcony, and saying, "Give Timmy an A."
And again, it kind of goes back to, again, this idea of, not how to accomplish the task, but, what are you learning from this? Are you learning that you can always, the ends justify the means, that if you have the might makes right, or are you going to learn actual value? So there's the struggle is a little more subtle than people initially think, I think.
Yeah, and definitely when you actually get to the point where you have to, one of the things that I've said, and this is the main reason that it's sort of a deconstruction of a power fantasy, is monsters can be as strong as you want them to be, because if you ever need to use a monster to solve any problem, you have already lost. If you need, unless the problem involves another.
Well, I wouldn't say always lost. You do. Obviously there are the.
It's gonna. It will.
Supernatural.
Okay.
Monsters.
It'll. Yeah. Okay. And there are the supernatural problems, but for any other problem, if you do that, it is generally going to cause more problems than it will solve. Those problems may be smaller than the initial problem you were trying to solve, but there will still be more of them.
For instance, bringing to head the interests of, say, the Men in Black or Levi Athen, things along those lines, which generally just creates the source of endless antagonism.
Right.
Yeah, that was, like I was saying earlier, when the one kid whose name is the character's name is George managed to summon his flaming bird Condor to go back. Within days, there were people there that were, UFO enthusiasts saying, "Come, greetings, aliens," etc. And then shortly after that, there were more eccentric investigators, which was a people who know about the rare few people that know about monsters and are interested in exposing them to the world. And one such person managed to sneak into the orphanage where all of these children live. Managed to disguise himself as one of the attendants and he had a device that he stole from the MIB that could detect monsters. He mistook one of the monster having kids as one of the other ones, and proceeded to hold that character at gunpoint and tell her that they were going for a ride.
Jeez.
And then her monster proceeded to eat him.
It went from a dark place to a darker place.
Yeah, because she then proceeded to suddenly realize how problematic it is to ask her monster to do anything.
Right.
Because
I
her
think,
monster
in a sense, it's interesting that these kind of ideas come out of it because, mechanically, games mechanic wise, monsters came out of the Wild Talents rule set. There was a simplification of Wild Talents, which came out of Godlike. So it's like, and these kind of themes are obviously very core to the whole superhero genre, as well as like, what should I use my supernatural powers to solve mundane problems? And with great power comes great responsibility, in a sense. So you have the same kind of tropes, the same kind of conceits that you have in superhero games and comics and whatever else, except with Lovecraftian monsters eating amateur reporters, the Bigfoot hunters basically, or whatever the guy would call himself. So when you're running one of the things to keep in mind when you're running the game is to keep these kind of ideas in mind. So think of like the Venom saga for Spider-Man or the Doctor or the Unicorn motorcycle for Dr. McNinja, for those of you who read web comics. That same kind of so what can I do with this, and how is it? And then as a GM you think, well, how can I screw my players who are actually using the power they have to improve their own lives? How dare they?
Not even necessarily like how much can I screw my players over, but it's just Newton's third law of RPGs. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction, and if a kid ever uses a monster for anything, which is how Mrs. Frida's basically began, then you end up having that kid trying to answer a whole lot of questions.
Though in regards to that, back to the original question, as far as tearing up your notes, it's like I told you before, Ross. There was a game that I was running for Matt and my girlfriend Manda, who's also on the Drunken Oak podcast, where I had a plot that was all written out on a note card.
Well, just to set a little context here, we were the characters who was Caleb Andrews, otherwise known as Two Dope, whose monster is Shoddy McKean, which is a time and space bending rabbit from a negative dimension. These two characters were in a museum attending an art expo, and Shoddy McKean noticed there was a presence in the air. He described it as, I believe, Nate, you said, like, there is something and it is scattered about. There is something. There are echoes of it. And one of Shoddy's powers is that he can bend light. He can bring things into focus, and so that's what Caleb asked him to do.
And then as soon as he did that, I had a means of getting to the plot and everything. And then he did that, and it was like, all right, take my note card, tear it up, toss it over my shoulder, and go, all right, let's do this. Let's improvise this thing.
Yeah, I think that's another. I know we mentioned this when we were talking before the recording started. The idea that improvising is sort of the key to running monsters, because and this is a common experience I've had even when playtesting Road Trip. Where I have this idea, and then people are trying to go totally off the end in Sucrose Park or something like that. It is like, well, how do I handle that? I had this plot, and you don't want to pay attention to it, so. It is a real challenge. You kind of have to be very quick on your feet sometimes. It depends on your group too. Some groups I've had were better at it than others. Your group group obviously sounds a little more willful in terms of doing what they wanted. But it's not like Dungeons and Dragons where there's mechanical reasons why your characters have to do what they want. If they want to level up, they want to get the treasure, they have to go through the dungeon. But monsters, whatever.
Yeah,
there's
the game's actually come to the point where for a scenario, I basically just I don't write like any kind of. It's just like there's this guy. He wants to do a thing. He's gonna be here. And
that's actually what I would suggest for anyone else that's going to GM is basically to do similar. Essentially, create a setting, create antagonizing force, and.
Well, there either obviously is a place for written material for published adventures, but I think even in Road Trip or like Candlewick Manor, you kind of use those as guidelines and use the NPC stats and the basic ideas. But yeah, that more than most games, you have to make the material your own. You have to adapt it to fit your group and your circumstances. And fortunately, with monsters, it's so easy to come up with stats on the fly, even more than any other one roll engine game.
Yeah.
Specifically because of the threat system.
Yeah.
Threat system just makes it really easy to run monsters because it's like, oh, you're going to go, like, say some kid is gonna run through this hallway and there's going to be some security guards that are just going to be like, no.
Yeah.
Okay, well, here's an 8D threat.
Yeah.
And the other thing is it's just so expandable. When the threats were introduced in Bigger Bads, like one of the things, the two things in there, or two different things in there, is like a swarm of bees, a burning building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can just be an environment too.
Yeah, it's true. That can be dealt with only in specific ways. You can't punch a fire out, unless that's your monster's useful ability. Punch fires out, which is it's a very specific ability. I'm impressed that they chose correctly in that circumstance. But I
think it was when we were musing over the Sunnyvale game that we played with you. I remember Sam when we were talking about monsters. Sam was just like, just because all of us are very familiar with that. He's like, my monster's gonna have useful detect superhero team.
Technically, that's not against the rules. If you have the foresight detect superhero team, well, then I guess that will work. I think,
only useful once, but so satisfying when it is.
Yeah, exactly. And technically, you could say detect plot hole or detect.
Well,
plot
and
device.
that's that's actually one thing that ended up happening. That's like one of the pre-generated monsters for that. Mr. Whispers has a plot button power, just like Mr. Whispers, useful, knows secrets, and can find more. Like, well, there's this. That was what happened in Sunnyvale. There's this mystery. No, Mr. Whispers knows all the secrets. Okay, you know the mystery.
So that's obviously giving you an idea of how challenging it can be to GM. But there are ways to improve this, or to get in the right mindset to do this. You kind of guys, you mentioned you've been trying to stretch this out, or you've had a lot of experience doing this, and you're kind of going to the here be monsters, metaphorical section of the map of the game where you're in the epic tiers. How you described it? What do you mean by that?
I mean that.
Well, basically, we've hit the point in Mrs. Frida's. This is Mrs. Frida's. It's gone on so long because it is, of course, an experiment in rotating GMs and in narrative flow, which has failed and has both failed and passed and succeeded rather simultaneously. But but it's about 50 sessions long at this point.
Yeah, it started as a one-off, and then we liked it and we kept playing it.
And essentially, when you have, because it's so long, you sort of encounter an issue with when you have monster kids or weird kids. Like, weird kids would be even worse, actually. But when you have monster kids who have an upwards of 80 to 100 experience points accumulated over the course of a campaign, regardless of how or why, you start to encounter like some difficulties in giving them challenges, because suddenly they can do everything.
Well, not necessarily everything, but I mean,
Most things.
So there are mechanical limits to the system. I mean,
there are certain mechanical limits. There's an upper limit to the system.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a point where characters have accumulated so much experience points due to being played for so long that they basically can roll 10 dice for everything, even if they don't have exactly 10 dice in that particular stat plus skill.
They've accumulated so many relationships. Yeah. I think the character the character that I've played that hasn't gotten as much experience as other ones, because I've run probably about 20 some odd sessions of Mrs. Frida's, like, he still has, like, I think his lowest stat is like 4, and he has maxed out relationships with at least 2 people and 3 or 4 other relationships. We've gotten in relationships into crisis very infrequently in that.
Well, the thing is the thing is, with as far as the system for relationships goes, is you only take hits to the relationship, and this is a thing with weird kids that mechanically kind of unbalances weird kids a bit, is that you only take hits to relationships when you have a monster eat a relationship, the monster takes damage.
Yeah.
And B, when you happen to fail a roll. When you are rolling 10 dice, no matter what, you're not going to fail the roll.
It is very unlikely to roll a straight, a 1 through 10.
Yeah, it's
on 10 dice.
Yeah, you're highly unlikely to fail the roll, and you're highly unlikely to say, if it's a maxed out relationship at 5, a 5-year relationship, you're highly unlikely to fail the roll 5 times straight over the course of this session.
Yeah.
So
this is true.
So when it comes to the relationships, it does sort of unbalance.
You're talking about, of course, very long campaigns, dozens of sessions, and even then you've kind of figured out house rules to deal with this. Or I know you mentioned about switching to wild talents. Was that
that's something we've been musing about. We still actually we're still trying to we have a tentative plan to do it. We're just going. The thing is, we haven't actually played any sessions of Wild Talents at this point, so we want to play the system and understand fully how it works before we try and do this thing that Benbow said you can do. And make that happen.
We're also trying to figure out how to basically translate how developed a character is into Wild Talents.
Well, actually, yeah. I mean, like, one of the things is that I actually have almost made my character Scott Vall in Wild Talents, and like even with all the experience he has and all that stuff, the basic conversion rate is actually it's actually pretty simple for a weird kid, because a weird kid is just hyperstats and miracles.
Yeah.
And for the most part, like, most of the things he has are hyperstats. And then the other thing that I wouldn't have thought of that makes sense is relationships turn into loyalties and passions, and the amount of dice you have in them turns into base will. And that actually works out pretty well. But one of the things I've discovered is that there's only 5 stats in monsters, and there's 8 or 10 in Wild Talents. I can't remember at this point.
I believe there's 6 base stats.
Plus 6.
Yeah, and there's a lot more skills. So the only thing that I'm trying to
Well, I mean, the thing is, you are playing a kid, and I think the only thing the way that makes sense to me is actually doing there's 6 stats and there are numerous skills. So the only thing that makes sense to me is have the kid as an adult in the system, but that's just me.
Yeah, well, I don't think
are you doing the kid like the same age, just converting them to Wild Talents, or are you actually going to age them?
We actually are. They're the same age, because the thing is, if a kid gets you can't age a kid too much, because if they get too old, then they just lose their monster.
Well, that's not in the system per se. That's not guaranteed.
That's a thing to the canon of the. It's a thing to the canon of.
Well, there's not really an official canon in the sense that, like, this is the absolute way monsters are, because again, they present different settings in there. Like, there's the Pokemon thing where have the monsters fight publicly. So,
but I mean, the other part of that that Benbow writes in there is that he talks, even in that one, he talks about kids that used to have monsters serving as mentors. That's one.
Yeah.
That is the one thing consistent to the world that monsters. And I mean, we could do. Yeah.
Well, they also
have-
there's also the NPC, the adult who still has the monster,
that
the
he's
bug.
still
The creepy guy.
Yeah, the creepy
Yeah,
guy
yeah,
who's
Yeah.
who's a child at heart and also in kind of in brain.
Yeah.
And I mean that could be a thing as well if they haven't gotten over their actual like internal turmoil. Then yes, a monster can still stay with them.
Right. I mean, I think again, we're getting that kind of brings up a good point about the toolkit approach to it. Is that there is no super official canon for it. I mean, yeah, Benbow says, and that's a very common convention to say, your imaginary friend goes away when you grow up. That's your rite of passage into adulthood. But that, I mean, for me, that's I don't know. I of course when I wrote in Curriculum Conspiracy, I said a wizard did it. The evil wizards are stealing them from children and enslaving the monsters. That's why that happens, or the monsters die. In the case of one character, and in Road Trip, that's
it's completely different.
Yeah.
It's two completely different like because Curriculum Conspiracy is a horror campaign and Road Trip is a warped Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean that's but I mean yeah, and you base that on the actual wizard antagonist who because through harnessing the arcane he manages to break even this supernatural convention. But yeah, there's I mean there is that is one of the things I like about the system that does make it just actually kind of talking about the toolkit approach. One of the things that I've actually ended up writing up recently that's on the Cult of ORE was a have you ever seen the anime Denocoil?
Oh, is that you who did the cyberpunk there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard of it. I haven't watched it yet.
It's basically kids playing around in with glasses that have augmented reality, having crazy adventures and fighting evils of the cyber world. And I realized that it's basically monsters find replace magic with technology.
Yeah.
And I ended up and it's just one of those things that sorry, Nate.
He play tested that over at when he was visiting. He was visiting over here in West Virginia. And he play tested it for a bunch of us, and it went very, very well. Actually, the translation was, I mean, it was good up to a point. And that was only because there was one minor glitch that made a character really, really overpowered.
Yeah, well, that's just because I didn't. Yeah, I mean there was.
That sounds solvable. That doesn't.
Yeah,
sound
no,
like,
yeah, that was. Yeah, it was
an inherently flawed premise.
It was.
So.
Yeah, it was a thing.
The premise itself is perfect.
Yeah, because in a world where people have people have movie style hacking, one person decided to have actual hacking. Which is far more efficient and deadly.
Yeah,
it's like
you're not doing the CIS thing, NCIS thing, where you're tapping away at a keyboard and I don't know. I'm sorry, I was thinking of a clip where two characters were tapping away at the same keyboard to dual hack.
Double hacking.
Double hack.
I made a GUI interface in Visual Basic. But like a bunch of the characters, like one of them had like I can spoof other people's glasses, and that means that my avatar can shapeshift, and like. Another guy had like I can create walls, and that stops the watchdogs. And then another guy's like I just break into the database and steal everything.
Yeah.
And it's
so
like,
I mean that kind of brings up, these sort of highlights one of the advantages I think of monsters is the toolkit approach where there is no set cosmology. Even we've been arguing about whether monsters go away when the kids are adults. I mean, that's kind of the assumption, but it's not explicitly spelled out in the rules. Like this happens. This is the only way it can happen. So what do you like? What I've talked about how I set the rules. I said it's sort of a PG rating. No monsters don't go Frank Miller on people usually, or they might go a little gruesome on other monsters, but they don't rip the mailman in twain, and spray blood everywhere or something like that. So when you guys are running monsters, what kind of things have you done to the cosmology? What do you say about it, the setting, and have you experimented? What works, what doesn't work?
We've certainly, as far as the cosmology goes, we've kind of created our own cosmology for it, which is something that is another suggestion that I throw to anyone else who intends to GM monsters is try to figure out who is the god of this universe, or try to figure out what the
source of
logic
magic.
of the universe
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, and that that worked out really well because the first thing we ran was Road Trip, which actually
Establish that.
yeah.
There's the monster, and it's bad, and you've got to stop it from wrecking.
The monster. I mean, from what you said from the playtest, it's like the monster. It's the original monster.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that actually was one of the things about Road Trip, was that it was sort of a meta. The setting was kind of each adventure was kind of a meta commentary on what happens in various monster relationships. You know, Sucrose Park is based what happens when when the monster isn't satisfied with just having one kid as a friend. It wants to be everyone's friend, and so it becomes toxic in the sense that he goes mad and he starts kidnapping everybody and holding them hostage and that kind of thing. And then in other one. In the Sentai Rangers is based on the idea that the kids reject their monsters when they show up, and what happens when the kids have this void filled by the fact that they don't have a special a monster friend, and they go twisted killing everything that shows up.
The one that I'm particularly fond of is Pastoral Manor, with the whole idea of growing up and forgetting your monster.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. And then what happens when you reunite with that, and it's not exactly a happy relationship. It's there's a lot of bitterness on both ends. So how do you have this broken relationship, and then you have the Eternal Glades, where the monsters want the kids to be there forever, where it's a very parasitic relationship. So every single idea of monsters I sort of explored with that. But again, that's that can be explained in other ways. I mean, or what other do you guys go with a PG thing too? Do you say like or
for the for the most part because of the Road Trip doesn't often get into dark places. We try to avoid that because it's an extreme thematic shift. Mrs. Frida's Halfway Home tends to be Mrs. Frida's Halfway Home is that one doesn't ever go to the crazy like fun time land that Road Trip goes to. It starts more neutral, it goes positive, and it goes negative. We went to a really, really dark place once that was like insane, and that thanks to our own Sam Graebner, that was the session 24, the fall of the House of Odin.
Where one character's monster proceeded to reveal that he is in fact the big bad.
Yeah, we had been kind of setting that up because the monster, I can't remember his entire name because it's something in Russian that basically means 1001 knives. But the first part of that is Odin, who for the majority of the campaign was a sort of if you've read Gunner Creek Court, sort of like Reynardine, in the fact that he was basically like pure evil, but he helped though. He helped. He helped out often. He helped,
but he also hindered at the same time. He gave the sort of idea that he was your ally, but he was also taking things from you the entire time.
Well, the easiest way to explain it is that he's a parasite. He feeds off of the sorrow and angst of his child, and while he's like an evil figure, he needs to keep his host alive so he can keep getting that. Right. So if his child was in danger, he would still help her because he wants her to keep living and keep providing him with stuff, even if
he would also plan against her at the same time, and then consequently do things to basically help the people around her. To build them up so he could actually tear them down to cause her to fall.
And while this is a thing, it's like it still doesn't go to Frank Miller, because while he was an evil figure, he was a big bad. He was a mastermind, so he was very subtle. He did things behind the scenes, and he set up the dominoes and let the other players push them over. That is up until the fall of the House of Odin, where he just said, "Okay, the mitts are off. This is You are going to become mine, or lots of people are going to die."
Right.
Some people did die. It was sad.
So not quite Frank Miller, but more say a Don Bluth movie, Bravest Little Toaster, at the end where there's a scrapyard and bad things happen. One of the or Watership Down when the general shows up at the end, or Plague Dogs. Yeah, am I off base? Something a little more like that. Then again, I think a lot of people think, oh, dark, mature games are again very grim, dark, and bloody and gory and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and the thing is, when you get to that point, I mean, you just hit Riccio, and it's just
the thing is that I think that's not really a good mesh with Monsters and Other Childish Things.
Well,
it isn't. No,
going with the emotional angle, the whole very dark, toxic relationships. I think that's a great way of exploring the mechanics of Monsters and Other Childish Things and the theme and settings without being, again, I go back to the Venom thing, where, oh my God, I have this awesome power now, but I'm turning into a different person.
And just to talk about the emotional roller coaster, the thing is, the Fall of the House of Odin actually started. It started with one of the characters had a really bad dream, and then she woke up, and there was a whole scene before we actually started getting to the plot where one of her friends came up to her and basically professed his love to her, and there was some happening there. And then everything proceeded to go to hell in the most literal sense.
Though, in regards to what you were saying about Riccio, and how also you were saying that doesn't really mesh well with Monsters. One of the reasons that doesn't mesh well with Monsters is that in regards to basically running and playing Monsters, you always have to keep in mind that you're playing children.
Yeah.
And children aren't necessarily prone to really going that far.
Well,
and if they are, there's something really wrong with that child. Because even if they happen to say, not to interrupt you there, but even if they happen to say, yes, I want to rend this mailman in twine. Okay, you do so, and then shortly thereafter, oh, I killed a man.
Okay, yeah, fair. Yeah.
What have I done?
Yeah,
that was actually one of the things that one of the things, actually, I think it was in one of Ross. It was in your old interview with Ben Bowe. That was actually one of the things that he was saying. That's if you run this game for actual children, they are brutal.
Yeah, they are. Normal children are. They're remorseless killers, and logically, that's the thing. I think one of the reasons why I'm so reluctant is because I don't want to get too realistic in the sense that, oh, I have a superpowered friend who can kill people for me. All will die. All hail, grimdark.
That was actually
fourth grade.
Although, but actually enforcing consequences and you killed that man.
Yeah,
that's
So I mean, in regards to as you were saying, with children themselves playing it are fairly brutal. There's a disconnect there though. When it comes to playing a game, that you can't really. Obviously you can't play it and then go, okay, yeah, reality, et cetera, because there's a severe disconnect. I mean, this obviously is a fake thing.
Yeah, there's no these people.
So you're not really feeling the emotions of the character and everything.
Well, yeah. I mean, children are the biggest PCs because none of these people are real.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter that they're dead; they never existed.
But if you're actually there and you're actually playing a character and you're sort of consciously / constantly thinking, okay, what really would this kid be thinking? What really would they be doing? And you think of them less as a player character and more as a real person.
Yeah.
They're really unlikely to just go on a mass murdering spree. When a kid goes and say, not to take this conversation to a dark place, but when a kid actually goes and takes his father's gun and takes it to school, that kid has been pushed really, really far.
Yeah.
They have the power to go do that. It's in their hands. They can go there and they can hurt a lot of people, just like, say, a kid with a monster can go to school and hurt a lot of people. But they have been pushed to the absolute limit.
Yeah, I mean,
they don't always think that way.
Yeah.
And I mean,
when a kid has a monster, that may be a thing. They may actually push to the point where they do that. And should that actually happen, okay, yeah, why not? Let them go ahead and do that because this is now an emotional situation for them.
And it all comes back that you can't control them. Just you can't. There's no way in hell you can control kids with monsters but you can show them what they've done.
Yeah,
And
I think
that was a big thing that really really early on. Did you ever playtest Shane Ivey's Cult Busters?
No, I mean, I've read the scenario, but I haven't.
Okay, so
actually
you've
run
read
myself.
it, so you know that there's a part in there where the two Cult Busters agents show up at the house, and if the kid can't convince their parents, otherwise the Cult Busters agents will take them.
Yeah.
In the game that I actually ran a playtest for Sean and Alex a long time back, and I haven't posted it because I don't think Shane Ivey's ever going to publish it, and I totally told him I'd post it if he published it. But basically, they succeeded. They took Sean's character Richie Spears and his monster, whose name was Dudicus. It was a giant cactus. When they opened the door, he was standing out there. And proceeded to kill them with his I use my spines like. Yep, there's a bunch of holes in them now. They fall down and they start leaking all their stuff. And Richie's dad passed out from fright. And then there was this whole thing where Richie's just like recoiling in horror and is like, "Oh my God, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? There's dead people."
Yeah.
And then also his dad just saw his monster passed out from fright. He had to figure out like. In a matter of seconds, this went from like something silly like this weird Ghostbusters parody to, oh my God, I have to dispose of bodies and make my dad think I didn't just murder a bunch of dudes.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing is, how Monsters has that, sort of great variable in shift in tone that it can go.
An emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
Certainly.
I mean, you in D&D, you kind of know what you're going into, and in Call of Cthulhu, you kind of know what kind of tone you're going to expect. But in Monsters, you don't know if you're going to have, the Ghostbusters or Dexter, the early years, essentially. Yeah. So that can happen inadvertently, like by mistake, because your monster, punched out the Cult Busters and rolled a whole lot of hits to the head.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, the thing is, monsters don't even have to roll that much. I mean, like. One of the canon things that is written about them, they have 5 hard dice for defense, and they automatically penetrate any kind of armor. The only way to do it, which is what you end up doing in Road Trip, is that don't have people. Don't ever have people that monsters can kill. Have all the threats be supernatural ones.
Yeah, that's kind of what I tend to do especially if they're going to mess with the kids. If they're going to be in any kind of, I mean, honestly, that's kind of what I do. Like I don't use the Men in Black, or if I were going to use the Men in Black, I would have them be robots or aliens or something like that. Because normal adults versus monsters, you're going to have pretty, or have them be evil wizards that turn into dust when they
even the Men in Black. As we experience when you actually get them into a campaign and whatnot, and you actually do make plot regarding them, is they tend to actually be less and less human as you actually find out more about them.
Yeah, I mean the thing.
But these are pretty much just fleshy robots.
Yeah, I mean basically the thing that I based the Men in Black on, because there's not a whole lot of description when I ran them. There is an adventure in the back of the Monsters book called "What Did You Get for Christmas?" There is a sequence where the Men in Black show up, and the thing that they do is they're trying to use this science thingy to get a sample of your monster. And the thing that Benbow wrote in is if the guy holding the science thingy gets eaten, as he's getting eaten, he will throw it to another Man in Black who will proceed to do the same thing. They are they don't react like people. They don't die like people.
Right, exactly. Yeah, they're not human, so it's okay to and also explode them.
And I mean, yeah, they are unsympathizable things. Like in writing scenarios that involve the only thing I'm going to say here is writing things for the Men in Black required me to think about a lot of terrible things to do to children. And I'm like, I'm really thinking about this.
It makes you feel a bit like a bad person.
It does, yeah. It was pretty. Yeah, they're bad men. You're very bad men.
They should be exploded with mine bullets. What are we talking about? Oh man, those guys is jerks. So yeah, and on that note, any sort of as we wrap this up, any final thoughts on running? Any other tips that we haven't gotten to for running monsters and other childish things for those listeners out there who might be considering running their own game of Road Trip or Curriculum or Candlewick or whatever they might be doing, or in their own game?
Well, I mean, we've already covered, to keep in mind what your cosmology is. Keep in mind how the logic of the universe.
Yeah.
Also, to keep in mind consequences of actions. Disregarding, not necessarily disregarded, but not being too attached to your notes.
Yeah, I do want to mention one thing. I know threats are a great thing, but I think every once in a while having a big fight where they're about 1-to-1, evil NPC monsters for PC monsters, and just having a big monster brawl is a good prep or is a good fun event.
That was actually how I concluded the MIB arc. That they actually there were 5 agents. They actually kidnapped one of the kids. And their friends and that kid's monster were in the fight while the kid was strapped down to a table because they were doing all their they were going kind of Jack Bauer on her. And the thing was, they were going Jack Bauer on her because there were 2 of them with Ghostbuster style proton packs waiting for the monster to show up so they could just blast the crap out of it.
Nice.
And that was also, we actually got that the monster is almost defeated in that.
Yeah, that's true. There's also, though, another thing I can think of here, off the top of my head, is as far as running it goes, not necessarily placing limitations on your players as it is, as Mass described as providing an illusion of free choice. And this when in terms of framing a game goes, these games haven't necessarily been posted yet, but there's I was telling you that I wrote a campaign that was heavily inspired by Road Trip. It was heavily inspired by 2 things: Road Trip and the Shin Megami Tensei games.
Oh yeah, the PlayStation games, right?
Yeah,
where they're high school students fighing monsters and whatnot.
Yeah, with monsters. You're fighting monsters with monsters. Yes. So it was a really easy transition. So in this campaign that I was running, is basically the kids didn't have their monsters in the real world. They had their monsters in this sort of reverse world sort of situation where, this reverse world that's just like their world, but just directly
Silent Hillish,
directly influenced by the underworld.
Apply the Silent Hill filter to the real world. There you go.
Well, yeah, we actually took the Silent Hill filter and then turned it purple.
Yeah. Nice. And then connected it to an endless labyrinth and all that jazz. And when they're in that sort of situation, they were able to use their monsters. Well, the thing is when they were there was a goal already established. So they're taking their monsters and they're having their monsters do crazy amounts of beautiful bullshit. Mm-hmm. And fighting the threat and everything. But the thing is they couldn't really use their monster to stray from the plot itself. Mm-hmm. Because once they were in that world, their monster was really just something that gave them the power to not die.
Boy, that's a useful power though, but not exactly one that can cause them to go flying through the city to catch with a giant flaming bird, for example. So not quite the same thing. So yeah, I think that's actually a really good solution if you're running a game and you don't want to deal with a lot of that. My monster accidentally murdered a lot of people.
Yeah, that was actually that's actually the same thing that I did in the Grid as well, because all the powers and the monsters and all that stuff that exists in a world driven by computers. Right. They can affect anything that's connected. Yeah. Space. So you take off your glasses, there's nothing there.
Yeah. So they're really useful and they can talk to you. So they're kind of like muses from Eclipse Phase, only with a little more aggressive. So that's actually those are really good solutions. So again, if you want to run a little more sedate game, or in a sense not have to worry about those kind of genre breaking, you got Frank Miller in my Peanuts, you got Peanuts at my Frank Miller,
But so I'm sorry to interrupt you again.
Yeah,
but I mean, on the other side of things, like, so I mean, yeah, there's the one thing: disconnect the monsters from there and prevent your players from breaking anything. On the other side, give them something to break, and then say, "Look at how you broke everything for the next 50 sessions."
And the drawback to that is that you can very well go into, as Ross was saying, Peanuts in your Frank Miller or Frank Miller in your Peanuts. You can do that, but at the same time, the perk of it is that it turns on GM easy mode.
Yeah.
You no longer have to write that much. You can just sit back and react to the players, basically.
Yeah.
You can just sort of,
that's true.
It makes improvisation extremely easy, as they are creating the plot for you.
This is true.
And that was the other thing that I mean, we barely have like touched this, but like one of the things that we had said a couple of times, this is Monsters tends to be a very player driven game. Players will go off and do their own thing, focus on relationships, interpersonal development, all that stuff. Like there will be a lot of interpersonal role playing, more so if you go for the alternate style where a player plays another player's monster, which is always that's actually barring a couple rare occasions, in Mrs. Frida's, that's what we always do, is have a player play another player's monster.
Yeah, I mean, Tom and I talked about that too. The difficulty, and a lot of people have problems role playing two characters, especially if they're talking to each other. So having someone else to bounce off against can be useful. Tom prefers to role play his monster as well, but he's also a GM, so he's used to playing a lot of different people at once and talking to himself.
And actually,
that's just all GMs are, just him. So
that was actually one thing. Very referencing the Cult Busters game again. That was a 2-man game, and actually like having a player play the other player's monster ensured that no matter what happened, both those players would always get to do something.
Yeah.
And then also, I mean, there's the one Ross, that you do whenever you run an econ game, which is to split them up. And if you just make it a 2-man team, that is another way to kind of limit things in itself, just because.
I mean, there's no easy way to run monsters for 6 people, but that's the only workable way I've seen.
Yeah.
Unless if you're doing 6 kids with weird powers, I could see that working. A Candlewick Manor type game, but that's if you're actually having actual monsters in the game. You just can't have 6 monsters running around.
And I mean, in Mrs.
They're gonna flatten everything.
Yeah, well, I mean, and also in Mrs. Frida's, like the monsters tend to remain hidden like 90% of the time.
Yeah.
Especially since the MIB has come around once and shown them why you shouldn't not do that.
Though, incidentally, speaking of that, and that's something that I know you want to wrap this up soon, Ross, but this is definitely a thing that I discovered while running monsters that is extremely useful. One of the things about this is that the monsters themselves, when you have a lot of monsters, or you have a lot of or you have just a very few strong monsters, and say it's a situation like say it's a situation like fighting the Brain Trust.
Mm-hmm.
You have these kids and they have the monsters. Let's say you have like 5 player characters. Each one has a monster. They're fighting the Brain Trust.
Yeah.
They're going to wreck the Brain Trust.
Yeah, I mean 5 versus 1. I mean it's
even if the Brain Trust does go 3 times around.
Even if it goes 3 times around, they're going to wreck the Brain Trust.
Yeah.
However, one of the things that actually limits that actually just like really changes the situation. And I found this out because when I was running the games that the campaign that I tentatively called Shin Megami Tensei and Other Childish Things. What I found there is that they would always wreck the boss fights, always. So what I started designing the boss fights to specifically attack the children.
And on the other side of things,
or do things that affected children, rather. Say there was one that would like send out a sort of static wave. It's not so much that it would specifically just like attempt to take its claws and hit a child with its claws. as it sent out like a pulse or static wave or something that would like cause the kids to have headaches or problems like that. And when the kid loses all of their dice in a location, it also harms the monster.
Actually, it's the other way. It's the other way around. If a monster loses all their dice, a kid loses.
If the kid happens to be KO'd, though, the monster can't.
In that specific game. The other thing, the other option, is there's 5 people against the Brain Trust. The Brain Trust is the head of security for Sucrose Park. A bunch of trap doors open and six
robots,
6 AT threats pop out.
Yeah,
all kinds of robots with
laser
guns, flamethrowers, flamer lasers.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously,
the threat system is really useful.
Yeah, as we have mentioned before, but again, that goes down to basic kind of GMing in the sense that you don't have 5 players versus 1 NPC is going to be a short-sighted fight just because of how all that's 5 actions versus 1 action. So even 3 actions. It's just most games work a lot better when the fights are against near even numbers, where there's there are a number of combatants equal to each other, something like that. But especially in monsters, because again, like you can specialize one monster with gnarly 5 attack.
That was the reason I don't try and control anything anymore. One of the first monsters that was made by a player had like 3 locations. One of them had gnarly ×5 and spray ×2, and all of them had tough ×5.
Right. So, so you kind of have to engineer threats to take care of them. So you have someone who's like, a spider that just spins a web and, paralyzes you, and then attacks everyone else.
Yeah.
So that players only like so much of that if every single monster has the way to negate or ignore their defenses. That kind of gives you a sense. So I think that gives people who are thinking about trying monsters enough of a perspective of how to play it, how to run it. So if you want to hear more, obviously the Drunk and the Ugly have a very large archive of road trip games of Mrs. Frida's Boarding House and other games. And of course we have the other games on RPPR actual play. So you should get a great sense from our actual plays of what to expect with monsters. So
and just before
thank you, Matt.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nathan. Yeah.
Just before we wrap this up, I would like to say that according to Arc Dream, for 3 months we were the only podcast with road trip actual plays.
Yeah. I don't know why they didn't put yes on. Yeah. Sad face. So they just like you more now. They'll find some other podcast and you'll be thrown away too. You'll see what it's like.
Oh, that's already happened. Shane Ivey never talks to me.
All right. All right. Well, we'll in the next episode we're going to be talking about wild talents, and of course in this episode we're going to have letters.
Letters tend to drift all over the place when it comes to the matter of topic. Sometimes I try to tackle real issues that affect gamers or some really burning problem that I see in today's society that is truly crying out for a serious discussion. Other times I like to delve into true inane bullshit, things that have no relevance whatsoever. Like me just standing on a street corner and noticing when something farts and then pointing at it till somebody asks me to leave. But today the topic falls in between those 2 categories. Today I'm just going to sit back and comment on something I've observed in most of the D&D campaigns that I've been involved with. It is the dynamic that players have with each other from the lowest level to the highest level. Now this dynamic is certainly different from group to group, but some trademarks of this are universal. First of all, let's take a brand new group of characters. They are young, inexperienced, and prone to try to tackle problems on a much smaller scale. These are the adventurers that help out the old farmhand whose prized cow has been stolen by some bandits. A merchant needs a package delivered to a neighboring town, that kind of thing. The players are usually very tight-knit out of sheer necessity. They are not powerful, and if it was not for their equipment and level 1 spells, they would be no different than a commoner, which anyone who has ever read the Monster Manual knows that a house cat could kill you. So they stick together, trying to survive long enough to advance in their chosen classes. Magic items are a distant blip on the horizon, or even getting a weapon with a +1 bonus is extraordinary. The dynamic starts to change as the players gain levels. In many cases, they do not rely on each other as much as they used to. The fighters are clad in powerful magic arms and armor, the M1 battle tank of the fantasy world. The casters have a veritable arsenal of spells at their command, essentially powerful artillery batteries. The cleric is now a mobile hospital and enhancement compound, able to buff the group in massive ways, and the rogue, with his highly enhanced sneak attack and with wicked magical items, is now the equivalent of a sniper with a 50 caliber Barrett rifle. Each one can do just fine on their own against normal threats. And the player's whole attitude towards the people they have protected for so long change. Suddenly, recovering that stolen cow is nothing more than a distraction. I have observed many players actually start to resent the rank-and-file citizens. They seem to think that if the citizens aren't going to try to grow stronger to defend themselves, then why should the players care? And those bandits are just dust in the wind now. At high enough levels, even armies cannot withstand the onslaught of a group of high-level adventurers. And with access to other planes and worlds, the cares of the material world really start to seem dull and unimportant. It was thinking about this that made me realize something. D&D players are the watchmen. Those who have risen above normal people to become truly exceptional at various skills. They can do things that most only dream of. They gain in power, and suddenly they are strong enough to begin ignoring the laws and rules that other people have to obey. When that happens, they start to grow disdainful of the so-called authorities. The problems of the little people fade in comparison to the now world-threatening foes they turn their attention to. And if they get high enough level, they become Dr. Manhattan. They get bored of the affairs of people. The normal world no longer matters. Any threat that only threatens that world is something hardly worth thinking about. The players then turn their attention to other planes of existence, trying to find something to make their godlike minds try to give a crap. In essence, all D&D players want basically one thing: the power to keep being amused with violence, even if they have to start traveling the universe to kill gods. And screw bar wenches, even if those bar wenches dwell in the heavens and are demigods. Happy gaming.
So there's a good letter, Tom. That
Thanks.
actually reminded me of, well, you might have been inspired a little bit by a post on the Something Awful forums from a long
you
time
emailed
member.
it to me.
To several people because it was so great, from a member called Fugo Fish in the traditional game subforums, which I'm going to read to everybody now in my Rorschach voice because it is.
It's Rorschach. Basically.
Yeah, it's Rorschach. It's amazing. Anyways. Kobold carcass in a 10x10 corridor this morning. Mace imprint on burst stomach. This dungeon is afraid of me. I have seen its true face after a successful sense motive check. The hallways are extended oubliettes, and the oubliettes are full of blood, and when the layers finally scab over, all the vermin without an aquatic template will drown in 2 turns or less. The accumulated loot of all their skill challenges and pillage will surge up above their about their waists, assuming medium size, and all the beholders and hobgoblins will look up and shout, "Roll initiative!" And I'll look down and whisper, 20. They had a choice, all of them. They could have followed in the footsteps of good men like my father or Elminster, decent men who believed in 15 minutes work for a day's pay. Instead, they followed the droppings of orcs and necromancers and didn't realize that the railroad tracks led into a cutscene until it was too late. Don't tell me they didn't have a choice. Now the whole campaign setting stands on the brink, staring down into bloody hell and/or the abyss. All those fighters and rogues and non-casters, and all of a sudden nobody can think of anything to roleplay.
Nice.
Yeah, and that was from an alignment to that was actually from another thread. Arguing about the alignment of Rorschach and other characters and how alignment is a horrible mechanic in Dungeons and Dragons. But this came out of it, so it was a beautiful, beautiful thing. So thank you, Fugo Fish, on the Something Awful forums.
Thank you much.
You were a good human being. So let's get on to shout-outs aside from that. First off, I would like to mention a webcomic I've been reading, which is actually I'm going to use as a basis for the Iron Heroes game whenever I run it. It's called American Barbarian. It's a post-apocalyptic swords and sorcery epic, and it's amazing. It's about American Barbarian who is like a He-Man type figure, only he has red, white, and blue hair. And a sword that actually, every time he swings it, it leaves a streak that's red, white, and blue. Fighting the evil warlord Two-Tank Omen, who actually has a tank for a foot. Each foot is a tank, and it's amazing. It's like Thunder the Barbarian with Jack Kirby art.
Wow, I totally remember that.
hallucinogens.
I totally remember that show.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Pretty intense for the 80s.
Yeah,
and Hanna-Barbera.
It's fucking great, and I'll put a link to it, and it's not too long to catch up on, so check that out. So I know you want to talk about the movie we saw recently.
Yeah. We I know we've probably mentioned the Lost Skeleton of Cadaver on the show before.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. You
It is.
should see it. But that movie, we knew it was coming, but not that it had already been out. Was its sequel, the Lost Skeleton Returns Again, which we, thanks to Aaron, actually, we got a copy of it.
Yeah.
Yay, Aaron.
It's on Amazon. It's actually pretty
Yeah.
cheap. It's only like $10.
But we watched
And
it.
you can watch it now, too.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah, it's got this, like the original, this great dialogue that is just tongue
Intentionally
twister,
bad.
intentionally bad, and incredibly obtuse and hard to pronounce. But these actors get it down perfectly, and it's a work of art.
Especially the
it's-
main character now.
Yeah, this time it's a parody of like jungle movies from the 50s and 60s, safari movies, exotic natives and, monsters and that kind of thing. So it's worth watching. If you like the original, you should see the original too. Oh my God. If you haven't seen Lost Skeleton of Cadavra, oh my God.
I also wonder.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, it's dialogue that you have to be a good actor to get intentionally that bad.
yeah, you do. So, watch it.
You better watch it.
Next up, I'd like to mention another webcomic that I found also from the Something Awful. I found American Barbarian from the Something Awful forums. And so I also found this one called the Abaddon. It's about a guy who is trapped in an apartment. He has bandages on his head, and you find out there's like 5 roommates with him in this kind of rundown apartment. They have nothing to drink but beer and coffee. There's no food, but nobody starves to death. And things get weirder from there. So, yeah, it's very much, I wouldn't say an homage to No Exit, the Sartre play, but you can obviously see elements of it in there. But it's a very existential, surreal kind of horror vibe. It's really creepy, really, really great art, too. And it's, again, not too long. Right now, it's only, 100 strips so far, so 110, so it's easy to read through in an hour or two. So
Nice.
Read it. Yeah, do it.
All right.
Just do it. It's free. What are
Okay.
you waiting for? God. Jesus.
All right. I got another couple of them.
Yeah.
Both of them 80s horror movies.
Yeah.
You know me in that. The first one is The Terror Within, 1989. It's, it's one of those end of the world movies where the actual end of the world's really kind of glossed over.
Yeah.
And you never actually see any signs of it being the end of the world.
Okay.
It's supposed to be a plague has wiped out most of mankind.
Right.
But all the rest are now mutated monsters. But it's all set in the desert, so you never actually see any signs of society dead.
That's a big disappointment to you.
No, it's just I've seen a lot of movies like that where it's like the world has ended. I mean, it's over there somewhere, but
Right. Well, I mean, if the world's ended, it'd be kind of like, life without after people. It'd just be kind of still shots of, ruined buildings for.
well, except there's these it starts with this one like there's a group of survivors in a bunker that have developed not a cure but like a vaccine that protects them from it. They have to keep giving themselves injections.
Yeah.
And so they're constantly wandering around this desert trying to find it. And one guy comes across this woman lost in the desert. Who, I mean, of course, this was the 80s, so one of the mutants has already raped her. And she's pregnant, and it grows, like, massively quick, and suddenly there's a monster loose in their bunker.
So it's like an Aliens ripoff.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, wow.
But, decent effects, but, silly as hell.
Wow. It sounds classy.
And nowhere related to that, though, is the other movie, Chopping Mall,
Yeah.
which is essentially the shoppers trapped overnight in a shopping mall that has just installed super military defense robots as security, and for some reason they break,
Yeah.
and they try to start killing people, and it is
No, they don't try to kill people.
well they
kill
succeed
people.
many people, and of course it's all like feathered hair 80s kind of
Yeah.
douchebag people.
I know there are animated looping gifs of like a robot shooting a laser at a woman and her head blows up.
Yeah,
I've seen that's very popular on Tumblr right now.
Yes,
so.
it's that movie.
Yeah, it's
And of course, what I love mostly is actually the cover art of this movie, the original cover art.
Yeah.
It's like it's a metal. It's like first of all, these robots have no arms, as I can tell.
Yeah.
But it's like a metallic hand with spikes on it, holding a shopping bag with severed heads in it. That's the cover art of this movie.
you're angered about this deceptive advertising.
No, I'm not. I want to know why'd you give them limbs on the. I'm probably looking too much into this.
You are. You just admitted you're angry about their deceptive advertising. I mean,
Is it too much to ask for honesty?
Well, I mean, for 80s sci-fi movies, for 80s horror movies, yeah, it is. Because that's the whole point of 80s B movies is that they have badass cover art, poster art.
Kind of like metal albums.
Well, but metal albums are just music. But, I mean, these are movies where, like, oh, wow, there's this incredible badass robot. And when you look at it, oh, my God, that's so lame. I mean, that's like every single low-budget 80s action movie, horror movie.
What, the cover of Escape from New York when it has the head of the Statue of Liberty lying in the middle of Manhattan, but in the movie, the statue's still intact?
Yeah, exactly. But even that's too big.
I blocked that out.
Yeah, that's every single 80s movies ever. I mean, that's just...
I would know. You'd think I'd know. I watch enough of them.
Yeah, but you clearly are in denial.
Maybe it is. Maybe I'm trying to block it out.
You are. It's not even a doubt.
You're a doctor.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyways, speaking of horror, there's a new comic series that I've started reading called Fatale. Ed Brubaker, it's an Image comic, so, create our own. And it's sort of, there's only 2 issues so far out of 4, but it's like noir, mystery, hard-boiled, with a Cthulhu, or some sort of Lovecraftian
type stuff.
Yeah, with some element of the Cthulhu mythos. It's about an immortal woman, how she's a femme fatale, hence the title of the name, and there's cultists, and disembowelings and beheadings and just,
monsters.
Nothing explicit. I mean, there's no monsters like actually in the comic so far, but it's been kind of implied that there are bad things. So, I mean, we're only 2 issues in, so we'll
fantastic.
Yep. Next up, and finally, a new cyberpunk series, Bone and Wires. It's from Michael Sheen, who his sci-fi novel Shadow Under a Dead Star, I believe. Shadow of a Dead Star. I've mentioned on a previous podcast. He's now doing a serial short story based in the same universe. It's basically kind of Eclipse phasey, not quite as advanced technology, but corporate investigators looking into what people do with technology in the future, which is really bad things.
What are you saying? We abuse technology?
Yeah, we do. And
that's breaking my disbelief there.
So you can, and it's a free download on Curiosity Quills, some new small publishing company's website. So, hey, check that out.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So that's our little shout-outs.
Okay. Are we really doing this?
I guess. I don't know what we're doing.
You're very tired.
Yeah. No, I feel better now, actually. So
good.
Decaffeinated tea, not always a good idea. So, anecdotes. We, of course, haven't been getting many listener emails lately. But we have, but not like the anecdotes. So, if you have them, send them in. We'll get them.
We'll read them.
Yeah.
We'll make you famous.
Yeah. But I would like to mention our new Wild Towns game. You won't listen for a long ass time because I'm a monster and I don't really.
Well, it was a time between tiers.
Yeah. We just ended the second tier, and in between tiers, we run one-shot games using the same characters. And this time, I get to play. And Caleb ran a game where essentially we were trying to save Sanctuary, which is the bottle in a city.
City in a bottle.
City in a bottle. Sorry, city in a bottle of the new Arcadia setting, where there are all these aliens and refugees. They have nowhere else to go, and the planet's called Sanctuary. And this bad person had basically set up us the bomb.
Wow!
Yeah,
we're going way back.
I know, right?
We're stepping in the Wayback Machine here.
Yeah, exactly. And had created a massive device that would destroy the entire planet, kill all the people, and as being heroes, we must stop it. But there was a few, and we were playing the final tier of this Wild Talents campaign is going to be with 500-point characters. So yeah. So. Caleb had a good idea to deal with 500-point Wild Talents characters. You want to explain?
Yeah, I'd probably massacre it, but what it gains is it's taking place in
it's called the Preserve.
It's called the Preserve. It's essentially for beings that essentially have work on different physics. So, and they formed this whole society in this place called the Preserve, based on like a magical society, like magical fantasy type thing, largely based on video games and things like that.
Well, that's how it appeared to us, our characters.
So we were there, and essentially we don't belong there.
Yeah.
And this whole place has dragons flying overhead, which are essentially the defense mechanism of the place, where
Or one of them.
where if something starts,
Well, the dragons are to keep us from flying or teleporting. If they see anything, then they'll activate the reciprocal defenses, and it's a really clever system that Caleb thought of. It's basically he based it off of Skyrim, Skyrim's internal game logic, which was in Skyrim, monsters leveled up with you, and they always adapted to what you were doing. So in the preserve, basically anything we did, the inhabitants, the natives of that area would start to do. So like the first time we were fine, second time they get a bonus, the third time they get a large bonus to their dice pool, and then the fourth time
they get it.
They get whatever power we were doing. For example, if I shot them with a lightning gun, after 4 times they would have
lightning guns.
They'd shoot lightning out of their asses.
And I think actually it was like the person you used it against. Yeah. I think if you used it more, then everyone would get a lightning gun.
Yeah. Or if you regenerated, or if you
even
were
using
too
skills.
smart, yeah. If like one of our characters has 5 hard dice in mind now, so plus normal dice,
everyone starts getting smarter.
Yeah. So, or you get to make too many stability checks; they stop caring about things. So everything's reciprocal. So the more badass you portray yourself, or you actually act, the more powerful the inhabitants get. So it becomes quickly unmanageable. So it was basically we had all these powers, but if we actually use them, we'd be fucked. Yeah. Well, we could use them once or twice, so we had to be really excruciatingly careful about what we actually did. And in order to fit in, we also had to blend in. We had to do
stuff that people in this world did, like accept quests.
Yeah. And so it was us basically going through Skyrim, fucking around with that. And my favorite bit was we went to the city. Yeah,
the town.
Well, it's called he had names that we could. He said if
Den
we
of
ever
Scum and Villainy.
Den of Scum and Villainy. If we actually tried to say them, we would mispronounce it, and it'd be a horrible insult. But that's how Caleb said it was called. And we were with this robot who was our guide for the place. He was like the maintenance robot who was sitting in a little control room surveillance room outside. And his best friend was a soda can, because he was a robot that was too intelligent and had actually gone crazy, stir crazy. So some thief,
janitorial contaminant 95.
Yes, a thief in the hive of villainy and scum, den of villainy and scum, had stolen the soda can. So I went off and chased it. And so I killed the thief, like, oh, who are you? The knife and dark will hold this. I am the knife. So I said, fucking, I am the knife in the dark. Oh my God, he is the knife in the dark. Prove it. And so I make a leader. I use different skills. I use leadership to claim leadership with the Thieves Guild. And then I use lie to lie and say, oh, you must steal everything from this mansion. I have already done this, and replace it with an exact duplicate. So I became the chosen one, the knife in the dark.
And I became the Batborn.
Yeah, instead of the Dragonborn. So it was an insane game.
Very insane.
It was very meta fourth wally, but it was very fun because it's basically, I realize now that I'm going to have to be running this Wild Talents campaign with 500-point characters. I'm going to have to basically do shit like that every single time to challenge you, because otherwise, like, things like skill checks no longer really apply to your characters, and like simple combat no longer applies to your character, because like, oh, I provide 4 hard dice of defense to everybody, so all the time, derp derp derp. So
Jason was right.
Yeah, Jason was right. I actually emailed a rules question to Eric Solzy, and he agreed with Jason's ruling. So
Jason's going to enjoy to hear that.
Yeah, he has. He's already.
That's what he's doing right now.
He's like, I'm right, Jason.
I beat Ross.
Yeah, basically. So you have something to look forward to in that.
Indeed, it's a very good game, and I actually look forward to getting back into the actual campaign.
Yeah, which we will start in the next week or two. So if Aaron runs his giant size game first, we'll find out.
Yeah, he's got to run it though.
Yep, he does. So, but we'll find out. Anyways, that's about it for this episode. So we'll see you.
Episode 70.
Yes, episode 70 is there.